is not new. It's called the Contradiction of Capitalism. And I hesitate to use this phrase because, of course, I'm talking about the monetary system generally, not just capitalism. Of course, that can mean anything you want it to, and it often does. For not only is the obsolescence of human labour the obsolescence of the human consumer, the high level of output generated by technological efficiency makes the corporate motivation to pursue such advances very strong, even though it is economically self-defeating over time. In other words, regardless of the level of productivity, if people don't have jobs, they can't buy anything. This very fact alone, that productivity is inverse to employment in all sectors, should be enough to warrant a deliberate shift from the focus of human labour to a system where technology is given the highest priority. The system is literally denying peak production in a world where those 1 billion we mentioned are starving. I think that's probably the most despotic thing I can think of. Another damaging culmination of a society operating under a monetary system is the propensity for generating established institutions. By this I mean the self-reinforcing need for any company or institution with power or vested interest to preserve that same power and investment to the exclusion of any and all new or differing information. It is, on a smaller scale, the same self-defending mind lock of most of the world's population has towards alternatives to a monetary system. Consider this. If you founded a drug company to produce cancer treatments, employed staff, attracted shareholders who invest in your company and expect a return on that investment, you must do everything to maintain the viability of your enterprise. You are, in fact, a vested interest in cancer. Were there a cheap, easily administered, non-toxic cure for a wide variety of cancers to come along, you are forced into a position of fighting tooth and claw to suppress, outsell, and block this alternative medicine. The need for cyclical returns, growing profit, and the need to maintain a competitive edge means increased prices and the maintaining of the status quo. It doesn't matter if it's bad for people or not. The radical change in the status quo means ditching practices developed drugs and research has been heavily funded on, and which employs large numbers of people. And even if the jump was made to a singular, cheap, and easily applied treatment, prices would remain artificially high to maintain the profits and the bottom line you already inherited from the old system. Immediately, this puts the treatment out of the reach of the poorer sections of society, exactly those in the more unequal countries who absolutely require it. And those in more unequal countries have higher rates of illness as well. In a sustainable society formulated around the logic of a monetary system, there'll be nothing to hold back developmental implementation of anything once it's been tested thoroughly. There could be no established institutions. New methods would immediately be implemented into society, and no monetary institution thwart the change due to their self-preserving nature. Prior evidence of this kind of sick self-preservation to the detriment of the population easily fades from collective public memory. However, here are some examples of the outright lies that various institutions have perpetrated to preserve their own operational safety, regardless of social concern. Has anyone seen these? Lucky Strike are almost the best example of this, actually. If you look, there's a guy on YouTube who keeps posting 1950s adverts. It's surprising how many of them are Lucky Strike. Filled with facts, evidence, and dead-faced, grinning physicians with rosy cheeks, Lucky Strike clearly saw the benefits of employing pseudoscience to convince countless people of the alleged safety and superiority of their cigarettes. Rather than withdraw this poison from the marketplace, the act of reinforcement of sales through advertising is obvious. And rather than any government banning outright the sale of deadly toxins being sold to their own voters, the tax garnered from their sales, which grows year upon year, proves to be the dominant social mechanism in the process that selects this cultural attribute for self-preservation. Or how about this? Now, forgive me, let's see if we can get some sound. Oh well, I'll explain what it is. Bayer Corporation. This was in the 1970s. It was actually a company that Bayer bought. They produced a set of blood samples, or like a blood sample drug that would help haemophiliacs, but it got tainted with the AIDS virus. So under the FDA's approval, they dumped this AIDS-tainted drug in Portugal, Japan, Spain, and bits of France as well. They basically got away with it and they had to turn a profit. That's the reason they did it. A normal person would throw that stuff away, but they had already invested so much money in this drug that they absolutely had to sell it somehow, regardless of social concern. And it's one of the most extraordinary ones. You can actually find the YouTube clip. When I ultimately upload this presentation, I'll actually put the sound on it as well. I can hear it here. Right, off you go. Have you ever wondered what today's Lucky Strike products are? What is your asbestos? What is your HIV-infected commercial medicine? What is our generation's DDT? What is the thalidomide of now? Pushed as safe and sound, rushed through production without proper testing or understanding the effects due to the profit system. Commercial drugs have patent lifespans of 7 years, including trials, and it takes only a cursory glance at modern medicine to see stories like Vioxx and realize how important, which is more important out of human concern and the profit motive. What is being sold to you now that is self-evidently harmful, ineffective, and deliberately expensive? What today, tonight, will you consume that is developed to solve a non-existent problem such as restless leg syndrome, or produced and tested in the cheapest way that can be, like Dell computers? I'm sorry, I've got a Dell as well. Or marketed to you as absolutely necessary, like SSRI antidepressants or carcinogenic food colorings, which are only there to make the food more attractive so you'll buy it. But why do we forget these histories of socially offensive behaviour and outright danger, these negative retroactions in our societal construct? Are we stupid? No, it's not that. Well, many people regard the corporations as responsible in abstraction, almost as separate individualised entities. Corporate fines or the public offering up of CEOs for punishment in a semi-ritualistic manner makes people feel a misguided sense that justice has been done and that we can now move on, now that the offending bad apples have been removed, that an aberrant problem has been rooted out of the system. Yet the root of the issue is not an isolated behaviour by some rogue corporation or individual, for the damaging behaviours are themselves a generation of the monetary system to begin with. A much stronger reason for the attributes of our kind of attrition of our memories and our awareness of these kinds of failures is down to the media companies, which automatically filter out negative stories because of corporate ownership, the need to attract advertising from the very companies they might be exposing, or editorial censorship, driven and informed by worldviews already indoctrinated into the logic of the market system, as it currently is structured. You will not read about the vast corporate crimes in history class, just as you will not be taught the fractional reserve banking system in economics. Ultimately, it is of little value to the self-sustaining nature of the system, or is a direct threat to its dogma, as John McMurtry might have put it, and is just ignored. And it's usually at this point that many believe that greater governmental intervention or regulation, or even lack of government regulation or intervention, or some mysterious and detail-lacking reform would solve this issue. That a true free market would somehow work out for the better, that what we're seeing now is not the true free market. Well, quite apart from the fact that the ecological and socially offensive detriments we've already outlined would continue untouched and completely unchecked, one must realise there is no such thing as the free market. Governments are simply extensions of the corporations and the competition advantage-driven marketplace. This is why we see so many politicians going on to be heads of vast private businesses or directors of the World Bank or the IMF, or worse, lobbying and non-governmental agencies whose singular qualification is access and power and connections. Monopoly and cartel are the logical ends and goals of any corporate entity in a competition-based monetary system. For example, let's say I open an electronics store. I could probably do it outside given the problems we had here today. And at that time, there are 3 other stores in my area, and I have to compete with them. As time moves forward, I would streamline my competitive strategies and reduce overheads in such a way that my store becomes the dominant, most affordable contributor of a certain set of items, and everyone in town flocks to my store over the others for such items. Due to this, 2 of the other 3 stores go out of business and leave town. So now at this point it's just my store and the little other competitor in my region. Since my profits have been so good, I decide to attempt to acquire or buy the competing store in town. They agree, so I purchase that store, put my logo on it, and boom, we have a regional monopoly. Likewise, let's assume I didn't purchase the other store, but rather became friends and then partners with them, and thus figured out ways to allow for both of us to flourish in a non-competitive way. Well, then you have a cartel. In other words, business is based in part on a gaming strategy to win market share and hence profit. Therefore, it is a natural gravitation to seek dominance in your sector or industry.